So that's a pretty strong commitment. As far as positions go, what do you think is the most difficult thing you've come across so far?
Professionalism. I'm pretty sure all of us have had those moments where you're trying to be aware of boundaries and learning how to communicate. Because for me, this was my first real job, you could say, out of school. Other jobs I've had were really only temporary. For this current position is kind of the start of my career. But being aware of boundaries and how to be professional, how to communicate through email, how to facilitate meetings, that's definitely been a challenge for me being in the workplace. But I'm so glad I have a boss and coworkers who are able to provide me with great feedback so I can improve.
How well do you think your MSW prepared you?
I think it did help me quite a bit, especially in my current position. I think one of the things that did stand out in my interview was that I knew what an RFP was, what a request for proposal is, and kind of what the grant process was for organizations, because I did take the grant writing course, and I also knew what strategic plans were and what asset maps are and what outcomes are. And I think that my education in CAP did prepare me for a lot of those, and learning about advocacy. In addition, I think having that knowledge as a social worker also was a great asset as well, because I'm actually the only person in my organization that has a social work background. I'm also the only person that has a master's at my organization as well. My boss comes from a business background. I'm a supervisor. She was an executive director of a nonprofit. Our marketing person has marketing skills, and our accountant has, financial knowledge. And then our operations person, she's a former teacher. But I think being the community impact side, I definitely has benefited me a lot, because I'm able to see things at multifaceted perspective, from the organizational level to the consumer, patient, client level.
I think that's a wonderful example of a different kind of multidisciplinary team. In the health focus, we concentrate a lot on the multidisciplinary team of physicians, nurses, social workers, therapists. But I think it's really great to kind of get that perspective of what it's like from the side of what you're doing in CAP.
Did
Yes.
you get your LMSW yet? And if not, are you going to plan on getting it?
That's a great question. I have actually been struggling to get licensed. They actually have different tiers for social workers in Wisconsin, because the BSW, they're actually called CSW, certified social workers, and anyone with an MSW can apply for the APSW, which is the advanced practitioner. So I did try to get licensed, but unfortunately I did not get the score on the law exam that I needed to, because found out that it's not as easy or simple as the one in Texas is. There's a lot more laws, I feel like, in Wisconsin, because I have to be aware of tribal laws and the jurisdiction the state has on tribal land. But I am eligible to take the exam. I am planning to get licensed at some point, hopefully this year. But I just have a ton of projects that I have this summer related to work that I just don't have the time to study. I've prepped myself on the licensure exam, that I have an inkling of what will be on there and what exactly to study for. But no, I'm not licensed.
And yes, if there's anything you feel comfortable disclosing about salary or expectations, reasonable expectations, we can maybe kind of count on when we're looking after we graduate with an MSW degree. That would be wonderful to hear.
Yeah, so I know that some of y'all will be actually graduating soon, so I will talk salary with y'all to be frank, because I know that's always a big concern, especially when you're applying for positions. I'll give you the example. The other job offer I did receive was in Reno, Nevada, as a tribal facilitator for a food pantry, but they were paying me hourly at about $18. And then I discovered the cost of living was higher than that. And with that hourly pay, I think I would have only made about $32,000 a year, with taxes and with taxes taken out and everything. And I discovered that was not a sustainable living. I think, given the job market and kind of how saturated the North Texas area is, I don't think it would be unreasonable for a starting position to be about 40,000. And I know that's terrible to say because you're kind of asking yourself, how can I live off 40,000? My current position, I'm salaried and I only make 42,000 a year. But I know that eventually I will get a pay raise. Salary I get paid it allows me to live somewhat comfortably, but it means that I'm kind of devoting one paycheck to paying rent and utilities and kind of bills a month. And I think when I talked to one of my mentors, she said, I think for CAP students, the starting salary should be about 48,000. For me, understanding the market and how a lot of schools are pushing out social workers and how I don't really have any experience, I thought 42,000 was just fine. Eventually, I will get to that 50K. For some direct practice, they start out low from the high 30s to about the low 40s.
Right. That's one of the jarring things I've come across just in my various searches for positions is a lot of us have seen these advertisements and listings, showing that, need your MSW or master's degree of some form, need X amount of years of experience, but am only willing to pay, bargain basement prices. And that's some of the scary things that I see.
My cutoff, my standard was like, I need to make at least 40 something thousand to make sustainable living. If I lived in New York City, I'd probably be like, I need at least like $50,000 to $60,000 a year. I think given our situations, I don't want to say don't be expecting 50K.
That is such a difficult position to be in when you find a position that interests you enough and you see some of your passions in, but then maybe it doesn't quite pay enough, at least starting. And you're kind of wondering, well, how can I make this work?
I really wanted that 50K, you could say. But I think the more I applied for positions, the more the reality kind of sunk in that it wasn't going to happen because I don't have any like social services experience.
Were there any other positions that you applied for or looked into that weren't specifically social worker positions, but because of your background, your educational experience, that they would have at least given you consideration for?
Yes, there were a lot. I applied to a lot of, most of the positions I applied to did not say they explicitly needed a social worker. There were a lot of them said you need a bachelor's degree related to either human services, psychology, or social work. And I was like, let me just apply. I applied for positions with universities. I did interview, and I applied all over the place, from food pantries to universities to community colleges, all of that, a bunch of United Ways. I think a lot of it is assessing how your knowledge and skills as a social worker can be beneficial to that organization. So you have to really sell yourself in your cover letter and then also sell yourself in an interview.
Yeah, there are definitely some organizations out there that I support for what they do, such as, for example, Planned Parenthood. They support women's reproductive rights, and I'm a big supporter of that. However, at least regionally here in the DFW area, from the people I know who actually have connections in Planned Parenthood, they don't hire social workers for some reason. So I kind of wonder if it's a situation where if I ever wanted to actually do work with them, would I have to work with a partnering agency or even consider accepting a position with them that isn't, necessarily what I went to school for?
From what I heard is that people can volunteer with these organizations and then probably get hired on. And I think that's really where your cover letter really needs to sell you, because that literally is the first piece of contact they have of you, and how you project yourself. You could always just say why you're passionate about Planned Parenthood, and maybe they'll consider you.
Do you think COVID really impacted your job hunt all that much?
I think it did. I think given the situation, I applied for positions to the federal government, which was probably the longest shot I could probably shoot. But a lot of the positions ended up being canceled due to funding, because they couldn't get the funding for the position. I find myself very fortunate that I was able to get a position, because I know a lot of organizations were either one, not going to pay a suitable salary, or just wasn't hiring. When I look at budget revisions, I see a lot of organizations are kind of lowering their salaries because of due to COVID. I've seen them decrease funding from other items as well, or switch to different models as a result of COVID, unless you wanted to go into gerontology. I think finding position is going to be very challenging. I also applied for positions with the state.
Oh, what kind of positions with the state?
I think a policy analyst. I also didn't have much policy experience too, so that was kind of hard.
Was it difficult to get any kind of response back from them? Were you able to get to a point where you could actually get in an office and interview with somebody?
I actually never went into an office to interview. I've done all my interviews virtually. So I accepted a position in Wisconsin without ever having stepped foot in the office.
Did you find that at all intimidating?
I did and I didn't. Just because I understood the nature of the world that we live in, it wasn't really as intimidating. My boss was very welcoming when I first, arrived, and I was very shy, yes, at first, but I've adjusted to it.
Isabella, do you have any final words for us that you'd like to leave us with?
I will leave you my contact info in case you want to email me or have any questions or need some advice. I've provided some guidance for a lot of students. I've done it on Facebook, so I will offer you any advice that I can, but I will share my email address because I will share my work email address because I check that most often, and you'll likely get a response from me. If you have any questions, concerns, let me know. I'll do my best to answer your questions.
Isabella, thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us this evening. I love hearing these kind of personal stories of people sharing what they went through, just because the school puts out a little information here and there, but it's kind of stripped of a lot of personality, of a lot of direct insight from the people who have lived those experiences. And it's wonderful to have these moments. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Christian, is there anything else you think we need to cover before we leave?
I think we're good.
Thank you all for being with us tonight for our last meeting of the spring semester. Please keep your ears open for any announcements from the Social Work Council regarding any plans for the summer or the fall. We will have elections coming up in October. So if you do have any interest, please let us know. Good night, everyone.
Good night.